Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Byram, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Anderson.
Here.
Mrs. Dawson.
Here.
Ms. Harrington.
Here.
Mrs. Quintern.
Here.
Mr. Rickett. Madam Chair, the clerk certifies the presence of a quorum.
All right, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Hornig, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on. I will open up public comment. Ms. Byram, do we have any speakers this evening?
We do not have any speakers signed up this evening.
All right, I will close public comment. Thank you all. All right, consent agenda. Minutes and financial reports.
I move to approve the draft March 4, 2024, March 12, 2024, June 2024 financial report, and the food service reports as presented.
May I have a second?
I would second that.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye, sorry. And then monthly operating bills. Is there any questions?
Madam Chair, I move to
I do have one question. Sorry.
asked and answered.
I have a question. I don't know if it's Gary or Doug that would be able to answer it, but on the 6/28 and the 6/21, week of 6/28 and 6/21, there's two total amounts of almost $40,000 for Lowe's. What was the purchase? What were we purchasing?
I'm pretty sure that is the stuff for the new carpentry building trades class at the high school.
Okay.
And that was purchased also with Perkins funding.
That's Perkins funding for, yes. So it purchases at Lowe's to, for our new carpentry class at the high school.
Have we reached out to any of the companies for donations, like the DeWalt or any of those large companies?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I am not sure. I will ask. Renee's not here this evening. She wasn't feeling well. I am not sure.
Okay.
So
I'd just be curious what we could get donated when it comes to maybe some of the heavier equipment.
sure.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Quintern.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the June 2024 operating bills in the amount of $5,414,429.15.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Action items. Over to you, Dr. Hornick.
Yes, ma'am. So we're bringing these back from our last meeting. And we have Dr. Rolfrey and Monica Weaver are here this evening. As you remember, in mid-June, they presented our draft division literacy plan to put us in line with the Virginia Literacy Act. And we are seeking approval this evening. If there is any other questions, both Judy and Monica would be happy to answer.
Do we have any additional questions for them?
Bear with me one moment, Madam Chair. I believe I had one last meeting that we were going to follow up on, but I'm trying to locate that.
This is just the same information as you presented to us last time, correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I believe it was about the testing and how the information was tracked, but you guys answered that at the last go around. That it wasn't tied to the student's name, it was just reported out. Okay.
That's correct.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Someone like to put a motion on the table?
May I go ahead and ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you have had the chance to look at testing from this last year or doing the analysis yet, but I was just wondering how the pilot program may have improved any test scores or any student instructional, educational priorities that we have, if you know that now. I know that you probably will provide us hopefully a detailed report on that at some point in the future, but I've just,
We are actually providing a report later this evening with an overview of the scores, division level scores from last year. Each of the building principals is working with their teams and within their buildings on all of that data to inform their school improvement plan for the coming year.
thank you.
Sure.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. Next, and Ms. Byron will pull the information up, are the proposed policy revisions. And we are all available to answer any additional questions. And of course, we can take these in mass, or we can, if there are some that we have to set aside, we could do that and approve others. So happy to try to answer any additional questions.
Madam Chair, I reviewed all of these. I have clarification language that I would like to update on policies AC, AF, BDDH, GCE, IGAE, IGAG, JED, and JO. A lot of it's just minor stuff.
Do we want to start at the top and work our way down?
They're in.
Are they already
Alphabetical order.
included for us to look at? all?
They're not. I have notes if you would like me to send those over to you so you can have them in front of you.
Yes, please.
I didn't get to this until late last night, finishing the details today.
While Ms. Quincer is looking for that, Darlene did provide us some changes that she had identified and was hoping to get passed this evening. I don't know, it seemed like maybe a couple of them were the same policy. Do you?
Yeah, I think possibly. There were, a lot of it is just editing things.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we need to hit every one of those. I did send it to you, Ms. Byram, if we could.
I
Do we
was,
need to type?
I can fix those
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
and I was thinking those that do reflect just editing, let's pass
Let's
them.
just
And
say,
yeah,
right.
if we need to talk through the other ones, we could do that.
There were a couple, well, I don't want to jump in on
No,
you,
go
Chelsea.
go right ahead.
Have you found what?
Yeah, I sent it to
Okay.
Sandy.
Well, then go ahead and finish yours and then we'll.
We could tag team, so if anybody has
Okay.
things during.
Yeah, let's start at the top, and then if somebody has something to add on to that, then we can go from there.
So for policy AC, Ms. Byram, if you don't mind pulling that up. The statement at the top, the Orange County School Board, I would like to change that sentence. The Orange County School Board explicitly prohibits discrimination instead of being committed to non-discrimination. I think that language is just a little bit stronger. So we explicitly prohibit discrimination. Everything else remains the same, but after business, I would like to include language that states, nothing in this policy construes that the mere separation by sex is considered discrimination, as written in Article 1, Section 11 of the Virginia Bill of Rights. So that would be an added statement at the bottom. And then I would just request that we remove the VSBA from the bottom, as that would no longer be a copy of their policy.
On that note, I'll try to go through and do that to all of our policies.
We're updating, okay.
And so that would be the conclusion of my changes under policy AC.
Anybody else have anything for AC?
I don't.
No? Or we want to go ahead and approve that one, or we want to write the changes and then approve it at the next meeting?
That's up to the
Sorry,
board.
can you hear me okay? I was talking away from the microphone.
I have a request, actually. Since some of these that are more within the policy and not just an editing piece, I would like to have a chance to review them more before next meeting, and then bring at least those ones back for approval next
Okay.
week. If that would be
Sure.
okay.
I think
Okay.
that sounds good. Yep.
All right, so table.
Okay, so we will, as we look at these, we'll hold on AC, policy AC, put it,
Correct.
and then send it back, and then Laura we can make the edits, send it back to the board for the review, and we'll address in August.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I think that's a
Is that
good idea.
okay?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
Darlene, did you have any edits for policy AC?
No.
Okay. Policy AF, which is the next one. Under the second paragraph, members of the community. Where is that? Or, I'm sorry, paragraph 2. Why is that? Is that A?
This is AF here. Yeah.
Not on the right one, Chelsea.
Shall publish the school board. Keep scrolling down. I believe this is just clarifying language again.
I think it's the paragraph highlighted in green, right, is the one you're referencing?
No, I think I actually typed the wrong policy. I apologize. I think this was under AG. Correct. Yes, this was under policy AG. So I don't have anything for AF. Darlene, do you?
I don't.
Sandy?
No, I do not.
You good? Okay.
So I'm good with AG or AF as it's presented.
Do we want to move to approve that one so it gets?
Do we just want to keep a list and approve them all cohesively
I
at
like
the
a
end?
consent all at once.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Okay, perfect.
So moving forward, I apologize about that, everyone. Policy AG, the second paragraph reads, the school board post maintains. That paragraph, I mean, it's only 2 sentences and it just seems like a bit of a run-on. So paragraph 2, I would move to amend it to saying pursuant to Virginia Code 22.1-253.1, so on and so forth. The school board shall publish on the school board's website and update as necessary a copy of its division-wide literacy plan and the job description and contact information for all reading and dyslexia specialists employed by the division. So it clears up the language a little bit.
Just for clarification, do you have copies that have red line strikeouts that when I review them going forward for next week, I could,
So
We
if-
will do that.
you could do that? That would be really
Yes,
helpful.
that's what we will do for you all, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
So that it doesn't change anything as far as the meeting, but I think it clears it up a little bit. And that concludes policy AF for me,
I have nothing on that
or
one.
AG, sorry. All right. BDD, I had no issues with.
I did have one thing on that, and I don't know what the purpose of it was originally, but it was bullet point number 3. The member's principal residence
On
is
AG.
more than
Which one are you on?
BDD.
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 Bullet point number 3. Member's principal residence is more than 60 miles from the meeting location identified in the required notice for such meeting. I don't know that that is ever or has ever been an issue as far as 60 miles away.
It does seem odd, but I can check for sure, but I think that is the way the code may be written.
Okay.
But,
Yeah,
I've
it
always
wouldn't
thought it
apply
was
to
weird,
us,
too.
but
Right.
yeah, it wouldn't apply to us.
Right. Well,
Physically
that's fine.
possible.
If that's the way it has to be written, that's fine. But it just seemed
I'll-
very odd for our location, that's all.
Yeah. No, I've thought of that every year too.
I would say it's likely probably that it's tied to code. And they're identifying situations in which virtual participation would be warranted.
Gotcha. And then for BDD, paragraph 2, the old one and the new one. We originally had, I know when Chelsea was out for a while for her accident. We had the form that we read at the beginning of the meeting, and wanted approval of that. Is that something that we no longer need to have?
The
Because-
law was updated, so that's no longer a requirement.
Okay, so we can go off of paragraph 2 then. Okay, so then that's fine with me. All right. I'm good with that one then.
Next up is policy BDDH. I believe I brought this up a couple of times previously, but I do have concerns with minors coming in and speaking in general. Our meetings are recorded, it's open, we never know who's going to be here, whether it's a news outlet. And we've had an incident in the past where a minor disclosed something that now made, I don't know if it was local or national news, and that's going to follow them wherever they're at. So for the first sentence, members of the community, including students enrolled in the division, I would like to amend that statement to say members of the community, including minors with written parental permission, are invited and encouraged to attend meetings. And I understand that this policy was amended because of the legislation that had changed this past session. But at the bottom, we still indicate that student participation can be allowed if they are, or we may require students to provide their ID. I don't know that we've ever precluded anybody from speaking at any of our meetings, doesn't matter where they're from or who they are. But I do think it would be important to have parental permission in order for minors to come to a public meeting where information, could follow them throughout.
I don't know if the superintendent may know this, or if maybe you or someone else has background, or we might need to request legal, but I do believe that students do retain their First Amendment rights under a Supreme Court ruling. I think it was like 2014, so I don't know if we have the right to request that, but it's possible. I don't know. So I would just like to have that question answered, and then we can decide if it's appropriate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Yeah, the other thing that I would add to that, having some type of disclaimer that they would be given stating that this is recorded, it's live, whatever you say cannot be removed or taken back, something along those lines, that they are understanding what they're signing up to do. It would be something that I would think.
Permanent public record.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
If the parental permission is not legal, which I don't believe would be the case, I do think that it falls under our duties, but for clarification, if we could check with Micah on that. But additionally, I'm sorry, my train of thought just left.
The only one.
I don't know, it'll come back to me. But so do we have duplicate policies, KD and BDDH? What is the purpose of having two separate policies that reflect the same thing?
One's a regulation. Is it one's a regulation of how?
Well, there's a few instances in here that you have policies that fall under two different areas. So an example would be our acceptable use for electronic devices, right? So we have a policy that addresses staff, and very similar, if not exact wording, also for students, because we have the same expectations for both. But the policy fits under the overarching heading of staff. So you'll have one in G, and then you'll have another one in for J, for students. So when we're looking at student participation, there's a component. This is part of school board governance and operations. So there's a part under B, but it also deals with under K with community relations, and so it's located in both spots, and then it's cross-referenced. But there's a few of those that happen throughout our policy manual, and I think more just from an organization standpoint, and some of them are just, when they don't necessarily operate in a silo, we default to having them in both locations so that they can be found, depending on exactly who you are looking for, or from what perspective?
Okay. My other item that just came back to me. I would also like to include a disclaimer that the school board is not liable for any statements made by members of the public during public comment time. I think that would be important to have in there. I don't know.
The school board is not responsible for what they say or what anyone says?
Correct. That concludes policy BGDH for me.
No, I don't have anything on that one.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Moving on. We have EB, anybody?
Nope.
No? Nope. EBBA,
Nope.
that one I do have, and that is basically talking about insulin for diabetic. Does this also, would this also need to cover EpiPens as well?
All our staff are trained in EpiPens.
But you only have certain ones that are trained in insulin, is that the way I'm reading that?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something we can just add as a note or a bullet point at the bottom of this one, that all staff are trained with EpiPen?
We can.
Sure. I'd say that,
Training for EpiPens is rather short, and it's shown to all staff. The training for the insulin and glucagon, things like that, is much more complex,
Okay.
so.
So is there, I mean, I know we had done a policy before, which was EpiPen, multiple different things listed on the EpiPen one. Is it,
Madam Chair, if I may, the administration of EpiPens is included in emergency first aid training, which is covered under the first paragraph. So I believe it would be covered, but
it just doesn't specifically?
it doesn't, specify.
Just to clarify, I have a daughter with one, so.
Yeah, scary.
Does anybody else have anything for that one?
No, ma'am.
And then we are, oh my gosh, I should have worn my glasses today.
EBCB?
Thank you. Safety drills. Is there anything for that one?
No.
Accommodations for the disabled.
Nope.
FECBB?
Nope.
No. GC?
No.
Oh, I do have questions, sorry, on the accommodation for disabled. I'm reading here, not my paperwork. What is the reasoning for having this if all building codes are required to be ADA compliant? Why is there a specific policy that states that we will not, or that we will make sure that they are ADA? Because I can't imagine anything that we build wouldn't go through an architectural firm or an engineering firm that would require us to be ADA compliant.
other than to say we have it, probably the fact that we have it. Would you agree, Susan, just from a...
Bureaucracy.
I mean, if we can put in there to comply with the regulations under something along those lines, the ADA, that's a federal item, so,
Last statement has it as required by law.
right, as by.
Right, yeah, it's required by law, yes.
Okay, sorry, moving on.
Just an edit on that one, too, that I just noticed is changing the title to match the new title that we gave it. Laura probably already caught that.
Yes. Yeah, we would make the title of it up under book and section the same as the new title.
Thank you.
GC? Professional staff.
But your question is on GCE.
Yeah, the next one, no, I don't
Yeah, I have
have.
GCE.
I don't have anything on GC.
GCA, nothing?
GCA, nothing.
All right, and then GCE, part-time substitute professional staff employment.
Yes, I had under GCE, there is a list of requirements. Substitute teachers must be at least 18 years old. I would move that we remove the strike-throughs on everything except for the preference given a person's 21 years or older. I do believe it would be good to hire based on moral character, and I believe the substitute teacher should also attend orientation so they understand school policy and procedure.
I would agree with that.
And those are the same things I had listed too for that one. Is there a reason for the
Yeah.
strike-through? Was there a code change or?
I would
something?
suspect that these, if you look at actually what was sent out, what's required by code is to 18 years old or hold a high school diploma, pass a criminal background check, and then there's a bullet where, for school board to insert whatever else. So these numbers 2 and 4 aren't technically required by code, but we certainly have the ability to just maintain them and keep them in. So we can have one would show up as it is, be at least 18 years old, and then we would just keep the rest of the remaining 4, and we will just roll forward with that, and so that's no problem.
So how did the others get included in there? And were these recommendations of VSBA?
Probably at some point,
Okay.
and then code change, so I'm not sure how far back it goes.
1950.
We edited the policies at some point ourselves.
We added the last bullet,
We added the last bullet you want? Okay.
the last bullet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can simply just, if you all are okay, we will maintain 2 and 4,
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
and we will simply have number 1 read be at least 18 years old.
Yes.
I'm good with that.
I'm
Yep.
good with that as well.
Me too.
Done.
Absolutely.
So to clarify, we're good with roping that in with the rest of the approvals this evening?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good with everything else until IGAE.
Do you have anything in between there, either of you?
I think the only ones I had were just simple edits that Laura already has.
And what we were going to anticipate is the edits that you suggested, Ms. Dawson. We were just simply, those are, with the wordsmithing, we were just going to make the edits,
That works.
if that's okay, with,
Yeah,
of course,
that's
with the
fine.
rest of the board, so.
Yeah.
So IGAB, is that the one you said?
AE.
AE.
We do.
Health education, is that the right one?
Yes, health education / physical education.
I had
IGAD.
I had the one for career and technical education, sorry.
All right, so that's IGAD.
AD.
I was going to say, actually, I think I do have one on IA that I just realized that is just a word change, but I don't think it changes the meaning. If you want to, can we go back to
Yep,
that one,
yep.
just keep it in order?
Keep it in order.
So this is under number 13.
You go to IA.
This is on IA number 13. Which is page 2, number 13. That one just, the reading of it is really unwieldy to me. So I sent to Laura some strike-throughs to cause it to read early identification, diagnosis, and assistance for students who demonstrate deficiencies in mathematics and provision of instructional strategies and practices that benefit the development of mathematics skills for all students. So
like
that
that better.
it's not so redundant, but it's primarily an edit. I don't think it changes the meaning at all.
I do have one question relative to the strike-through on that same paragraph about reading. Is that what?
Because of
So that
literacy
became, so because of all the new policies, so particularly with AG and the other policies that come out with the Virginia Literacy Act, now that basically literacy is being covered in a much more comprehensive way, I think that's just more for ease of reading, and it's is being covered more comprehensively with the Virginia Literacy Act.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good to rope that in with the approvals this evening as amended by Ms. Dawson.
And also, Sandy, I think it would also, when you look down at 19 as well, and with the addition there of talking about the science-based reading approach.
Right, okay.
So I think it's being picked up here in this policy with 19 as well as with additional policy, in particular, I guess, AG, policy AG for Virginia Literacy Act. So.
Okay, thank you very
I
much.
asked that same question in my own mind. Why are we striking reading? It's like, oh, there's a whole new area.
That's correct.
IGAD, I had just trying to understand, what is the purpose of having based on labor market? I forget which paragraph it was in, sorry. I believe it's on the third bullet point, competencies-based career and technical education. Programs which integrate academic outcomes, career guidance, and job-seeking skills for all secondary students based on labor market needs and student interest. Career guidance includes counseling about available employment opportunities and placement services for students exiting school.
Yeah, so this is tied to code. I know when we go through these, and I'm glad we'll bring some of these back because Renee can be here, but part of what we're expected to do is provide students information about the various careers, certifications, et cetera, that they can get into, and how much of a demand there is in the labor market for particular types of certifications, jobs that they might take. So this really falls under the work in particular that our counselors, as well as Ellen and even our college and career coach at the high school through Germanna, are working with, and just letting students know the availability of jobs at the particular time, interest, et cetera, as we help kind of get them to put together their career plan. So
My only concern is the way that I read that is that we're giving them options. There's the labor market needs, these are the classes that would fill that, and then there's your student interest. So it's almost like we're forcing them one path or another, is the way that I'm reading it. I don't know if there's another way that we could pull that out, maybe clarify it a little bit better.
Sure. So we can do. I can we can work with Renee here over the next couple weeks and
Okay.
maybe wordsmith some things that make it a little bit clear.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. All right.
The intent behind it is for students to otherwise may not be given the knowledge in a different way to understand the labor market, where there's availability, and what type of things they would need to do in order to make themselves employable in that particular industry.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe
last
we
pa-
just strike through, and this is just me throwing this out there, for all secondary students, and then put a period there, and then just strike through labor based on labor market needs and student interest.
Where are you looking at? I'm sorry.
Under that same paragraph, competency-based career and technical education programs.
Okay. I'll look at the-
And then career guidance and job-seeking skills for all secondary students, period. And then strike through based on labor market needs and student interest.
That to me would be clearer.
I probably need to see that one and percolate.
Sure.
Think about it a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Just an option. I'm just throwing that out there.
You had something on that one as well?
Yes, it was the last paragraph of that page is another one where the wording to me was just really unwieldy. It's the first page, Laura, page 1, very last paragraph. So
If I remember correctly, this was primarily editorial too,
it is
correct, Mrs.
editorial.
Dawson?
I think I was making sure that it's not changing, as we say, high school to work partnership. Yeah.
I didn't see that it was a.
I don't think it changes meaning at all, but it makes it more succinct. Brevity.
So we'll add that when we work through this. Then we'll add that. We'll bring back some potentials for
Right. 'Cause there's
or
another
the
change
suggestion on
on this one too.
bullet 3, and then include
you.
Ms. Dawson's suggested edits for the last paragraph on page 1.
Yeah.
Sure.
Excuse me. Had you already gotten any information on the?
Well, he just answered that really in
Oh, that was
the
okay.
more or less, yeah.
Disregard.
the question about how do we receive input from the businesses and what's the plan for?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
you
So,
address?
So we have of course, we have our business advisory. We work. Renee works very closely with our economic development authority. Of course, we are a member of Chamber, and I go to Chamber meetings. I get ideas from the Economic Partners Group on the eastern end. A number of different ways that we are getting information from the community based on where their needs stand. And then as far as the plan of how we carry it out, we have career exploration plan that we handle through guidance starting in 6th grade and runs all the way through 12th. Of course, we have a Perkins plan for how we spend Perkins funding. We have a number of other written plans as far as how we go, but we maintain and do the work with the students in a program called Zello, and that is where we actually, the counselors are working with the students to do these things, to get them to begin to think about career, where their interests might lie, what they might want to do, what type of electives they might have to take in order to begin to become employable, or to start thinking about what it's going to require in order to get into a particular industry. So.
Okay, thank you.
You might have been, your previous school might have used Naviance or a different program. There's different ones out, but they help kind of frame what the student is interested in doing. Really, it's just a lot of one-on-one work with students.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. IGAE.
Yes. For this one, under such health instruction, I believe that's a header. Yes. So I would like to add a 4th bullet that states, shall be required to obtain an opt-in signed by a parent/guardian to enable student participation in such educational programs. I know some of these topics are pretty heavy, especially as it relates to mental health and whatnot, and so I would prefer that parents opt into that instruction. Simply, it could be as simple as with the syllabus, they sign it and approve it, or and you guys can handle the regulation part. But I think that it would be important for parents to have a little bit more insight as to what their students are learning as it relates to mental health. And there'll be a similar change for policy IGAG as well, request.
I had a few. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the emphasis on the mental health piece that are included as new bullet points here, I was just curious about how are we adopting a particular curriculum that's going to address these things, or how it sounds like it's in the health classes, but how is it taught?
Yeah, if you really really read through, there's a lot of things that are being added into 9th and 10th grade health curriculum. We have, as this was written, if I'm remembering correctly, this goes to implementation 1 year after board adoption, so this would be at the beginning of the 25-26 school year. So we're going to have some time to figure it out. Going back to Ms. Quintard, I'm not sure. That's something I'm really going to have to ask Mike about, as far as what is something that a parent can do or have their kid do or not do. I'm not sure what is required here, what we have, because some of this they were actually talking about, changing SOL curriculum and frameworks as well. So I know that this is getting a jump start because we'll have to have this in policy, but as far as how much or how little can be opted in or out of, so to speak, I think that's definitely something I want to ask Micah.
Yeah, my concern is that, I have a minor in psychology, and they teach us like, hey, you guys need to really be careful about what you're learning about, because you have a tendency to adopt these things that you're learning about. So whether it's, you're reading this description from the DSM-5, and it's saying, you know, these are the symptoms of this thing. So now you're self-diagnosing and saying, oh, well, now I have this issue. Oh, I have this issue. And so it turns into a bigger thing. But also respectfully, the Supreme Court of Virginia affords parents the ability to decide on their children's upbringing and education. So I do believe, and I'm perfectly okay with that running by Micah. But parents absolutely have the right to say what their children can and cannot have access to as far as their education, in my opinion.
Mine are more just questions per se, but a lot of the stuff that I'm reading in this policy kind of aligns with our character education. By implementing this in the health education and physical education, does this allow us to eliminate the other, the character education piece, because they're overlapping and they're teaching the same things? Am I understanding it correctly? I mean, it's a lot of mental health, which I think is what we were focused on in the character education as well.
I think it's something we need to sit down and look at them side by side, what
Okay.
overlaps and what doesn't. There's also some recent legislation that went into effect July 1st that also has a bearing on where it's taught, what's taught, that type of thing. So I definitely want to get Micah to look at it. But I think it's something we would need to sit down and really, compare the two and see, because we don't need to, duplicate everything.
Right. Put extra work on the teachers to teach the same thing in two different classes. Yeah. That's where my head was going. The other thing, it does focus a lot on mental health, which I'm assuming is because of the codes that have been released and updated. But as far as the mental health part, I see at the bottom, it talks about with the state police, with local law enforcement agencies, and consists of situational safety awareness training and social media education. And then I think somewhere along there we need to incorporate screen time and the impact that has on mental health as well for those students. I know the big thing right now is the cell phones, but it's not just the cell phones, it's all screen time. So maybe that's something that we can work together with law enforcement as well. The other thing that I was confused about is the hazing prevention instruction. We mention it here, but we don't talk about bullying. And it appears, and I know we have another policy that talks about bullying, but in this paragraph, it looks like we're replacing hazing with bullying. And I'm wondering if we either take this out, put this with the bullying policy, or we add more information on bullying in here as well. And then I would also agree with the opt-in. So you're all welcome to, you don't have to answer me right now, that's fine. But I think what Darlene was saying too is that if we could get examples of what this looks like before we would even approve this policy. I would like to understand how it works first.
Okay.
That's my 2
I
cents.
agree.
And then the last one, if there's nothing else on that one, Sandy, are you okay on that?
I don't see anything else on that one other than an edit.
Um,
And that Darlene did very nicely.
Sorry.
What was that?
IGAD. No, we did that one already. Sorry. IG.
AG, I have one.
BD?
IGAG.
Did you have any others before that?
GAG.
IGAG. That's, yeah.
No, that's the very next one.
Okay, sorry.
So that
Teaching
one,
about drugs and
That one
alcohol.
just-
again, it's going to be very similar as my last point. Orange County Public Schools provides instruction and then adding after instruction with assigned parent/guardians opt-in concerning. So I'd be inserting in that initial statement, Orange County Public Schools provides instruction with assigned parent guardians opt-in concerning. Again, same thing, it's very heavy topics, drugs, alcohol. I do find value in education in that, but I do think that parents should have a little bit more awareness as to what is being put in front of their kids, so maybe they could have conversations at home in addition to what they're discussing in school. So that would be my only adjustment to this policy, IGAG.
I couldn't really hear exactly what you were saying. Can you repeat that
Sorry,
last part?
yes. I said, so Orange County Public Schools provides instruction, and then I would add in with assigned parent/guardians opt-in concerning, and then everything else remains the same. But I think it's important that we put this back in front of the parents so that way they understand truly what their kids are learning, and if they desire, which I do find, I find that this is an important topic to discuss with kids. I do find value in this education. I do think that parents should have a little bit more understanding as to what's being put in front of their children, so they have the ability to have better conversations at home if they desire, in addition to what they're learning about in school.
I would love to see the proposed language, because I think that in theory it sounds great. I don't know if in policy we can require a parent to do something, so I just need to see it to kind of.
So essentially what it would be saying is that the student would have to have a signed permission slip in order to engage in this educational activity. Whatever, I had this growing up when I had health, and, just a permission slip that says, hey, I'm allowing my student to learn about this range of topics.
Okay. Do we have something like that already in place for any type of health training, or?
I believe it falls under the governor's executive order about fentanyl and overdose educations, and VDOE is supposed to design the one-pager, is my understanding, I believe.
Yes.
So we would just need to make sure it's not in contrast to what the governor's executive order says.
And just to emphasize again what I had said the last policy, and this is more so for Micah's edification when you discuss, but my position is that parents have the absolute and final right as to their children's upbringing and education as prescribed by many court cases federally, the Supreme Court, locally, in the state of Virginia. So I believe that parents do have the authority to determine what their children should or should not be learning, in addition to thinking that, I find value in this education.
It's understandable. Okay. Anything
Thank
else
you.
on that one?
That's all for that
It's
one.
on that last paragraph, but I sent it, so
Is that the two?
Laura has it. Yeah, the two.
Yes.
That's one of them.
I caught the two too.
2 weeks of school.
Did you get those
But
ones?
I think it can be more clear, so.
That needs-
My 2 cents.
IGBI, anything?
I don't have anything until JED.
IJD?
JED.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Do you have anything before that, Donna?
No.
Alright.
IJD is the next one I have also.
You got this?
And it's probably the same thing.
IJD, that's the one you have?
That was just,
Yeah, it's
okay,
an edit.
okay.
Mhm.
JEC, and you said JFD,
JED.
JED, sorry. I
Mhm.
can't see it. My apologies.
This edit, we had already discussed having the third absence. After speaking with Mr. Price, I guess my understanding of this policy wasn't exactly clear, so I just wanted to clear up the language so there is no confusion. Under B, and then A, so the title A should read upon third consecutive absence, if the board approves or agrees. And then the language would read, if 1, a student accrues a total of 3 consecutive absences. And then thinking further into this, 3 consecutive, yes, that's a big deal. But if a student has, an absence in month 1, and then in month 2 there's another absence, and month 3 there's another one. Once we are getting up there, I think we all should have that conversation so parents are aware of the absence total. So also adding into that sentence, and the cohesive sentence would read, if one, a student accrues a total of 3 consecutive absences or more than 5 absences total. And that would be, and the rest of the paragraph would read the same. But I think it clarifies it's not, 3 absences, they're sick 1 week and then 3 weeks later they get sick again. I think it should be either 3 in a row consecutive or more than 5 absences total.
Makes sense. Anything else on that one?
No, I would say that seems reasonable, but I would like to see it in writing and bring that one back.
Sure.
Yeah.
I did have a question on that one too, but I'm having trouble finding it at the moment. We're on JED, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's under section B, upon additional absences.
Question about the 10 days.
Right, so reading through it, after what you just talked about, Chelsea, the 3 absences consecutive and up to 5, but then upon additional absences, the very first sentence says, if the pupil is absent for more than 1 additional day, so meaning 1 more day after the 5. And then a little bit further down, it talks about the conference shall be held no later than 10 school days after the 10th absence of the pupil. So we're putting the policy 3 consecutive, 5 total, but then we're not gonna take any action until they've reached 10? Is that what we're saying?
Do you want to speak, Susan?
It didn't seem clear to me.
Really, the first sentence is about once we have an attendance improvement plan in place, when you miss that next day, that's when we're kicking into action with additional steps.
So that would be
Right.
day 6.
This is regarding when an attendance plan is developed, which isn't developed after day 5. It's usually developed after 10 absences.
Okay.
Total.
So that
Correct.
sentence maybe
Total.
should read, if the pupil is absent for more than 1 day, 1 additional day. Wait, no, it reads that, and a school attendance plan has been adopted.
Yeah.
Eh.
And a school attendance plan has been adopted. That's the part that
That's
I
the-
skipped right over.
That's
Thank you, Miss Taylor.
There's a lot of
for
wording there.
straightening me out.
There's a lot of wording there. So.
Could we
I mean, we could change that to after.
Could we clean that up and say, once a school attendance plan has been adopted and a pupil is absent for 1 additional day, maybe flip those 2. So that way it reads, we have the attendance plan and then there's another day.
We can.
That-
I do think that would clarify.
Okay.
For me, anyway.
All right. Any of the others?
JO.
Student records.
All right, so under copies of, and this is, I think, the 3rd or 4th page, copies of education records. So again, this reverts back to, I think parents should have access to anything that pertains to their student. So I would prefer that paragraph to read, the Orange County Public Schools shall provide a parent or eligible student a copy of the student's education record. Strike through everything from unless to the end of the sentence, and then add within 45 days of the initial request and in accordance with the fee for copies of records. So that would change to read, the Orange County Public Schools shall provide a parent or eligible student a copy of the student's education record within 45 days of the initial request and in accordance with the fee for copies of records.
It's over It's like kind of strange wording, yeah.
I thought that's one that I
Yeah.
also read multiple times.
The original wording, I think, is stating that because the parents have the opportunity to review the
come
record, they
and
can
see
take
it,
notes
right.
and so on and so forth. But I think that, it's their child. The student's educational record should be their property if they choose to request that. I know this is going to possibly add additional work to administration, but at the same time, I think that this reads better, and I think it's more fair to the families.
So I'm just wondering, how long do we retain student records?
I will just tell you, I
remember
mean,
being
you
requested to
can
provide-
be talking about a stack that's, we don't have problems in this area. We make sure that our parents get what they need. Generally, 99%, probably 100%. Susan, I'll look at you when a parent has asked for these records. We make sure that we work with them and provide them to them in a way that's agreeable, correct? So this doesn't prevent us from making copies. I think really the idea is the quicker that we can get the information, they can come in and do a records review, oftentimes is exactly what they need. I don't know if there's anything else you want to speak to your experience here, Susan.
The only thing I might recommend is that instead of just kind of the blanket statement that we won't provide, but just when a parent requests a copy, the school will work with the parent to provide something along those lines. When a parent contacts me and asks for a copy of their child's school record, there's a formal letter that I send to the parent that acknowledges the written request or verbal request, either way. But I also tell them in the letter that, yes, we'll provide the copy for them when it'll be ready and who to contact, but also that they can come in and review the record. And a lot of times they didn't know that they could. And so then parents will, send something back saying, well, I don't need a copy. I didn't know I could come in. And all they do then is contact the school and make an appointment and come in and see the record. But if a parent requests it, we work with the parent to get them whatever that they need.
And I wasn't suggesting that's not what you do. I just think that the language reads, we're not going to do it. And I think that
I think without something saying when a parent requests.
yes. So
Maybe putting something like that in would clarify that it's not just, we're going to make a copy of everybody's record for.
correct.
Will not sounds very harsh.
Yeah.
So this,
Because, we do. The
Oh, we
key
do
is
make
we
a
work
copy.
with them to make sure that
Absolutely.
the needs that they have are addressed.
So that should reflect that.
Agreed. Right.
So again, my statement would read, the Orange County Public Schools shall provide a parent or eligible student a copy of the student's education record within 45 days of the initial request. So the request, has to be made, and then within 45 days, in accordance with the fee for copies of records, then the school will provide those. And if the records don't exist, then obviously that can't.
Are there any legalities or reasons why we would not do so?
I've never denied a parent. And we typically, our general rule is that we provide it within about 2 weeks. A lot of times, in particular in my world, there's something that's very time sensitive, so 45 days would be a really long time. And so we always work
to reduce the time for you?
Well, we always provide it within about 2 weeks. We work
I
with
just think,
parents for them
probably
to
what
get that
Susan is saying
information.
is, I don't know that we have to necessarily tie ourselves to a time frame, because
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Or just something that says a reasonable time frame.
But what is reasonable? I think that there should be a maximum,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed 45 days. Yeah.
And we could say we'll provide a copy or the opportunity to come in for a review.
Well, that is in there.
Upon request.
There in the policy, there's also,
Yes,
it
in
says that you
previous.
can review the records, but then it states that we're not going to give you the copies of the record, where I think we should, if there's a request, I think we should provide that within a
Procedure
timely
change,
manner.
right.
And timely, I think, depending on the scope of the request of the records needed, I think 45 days would be fair. Obviously, if you can get it done sooner, that would be great.
I would agree to that. If that sounds like what's
We
being
just
done
don't wanna
already
tie your
anyway.
hands to 2 weeks.
So we're going to. make the changes and bring it back, please?
Sure.
Yeah, Thank you.
Yes. Madam Chair, that concludes my edits with the policies.
Were there any left, Laura, that we didn't do anything to?
I don't think so, but can I read back the list of the ones I think that you want to approve
Do we
tonight?
need to have the
Okay,
word
and see if you
official
agree
in
with
there,
me.
or is that just
I've got
implied?
AF, BDD,
I'm using this. EB,
The ones to
EBBA, EBCB, GC, GCA, GCE, GCL, GDB, GDI, IA, IGBI, IGBD, IJD, and JEC.
The only
And-
clarification is under policy GCE, we
That
have
would
the
be
changes.
right. That would be the one with acknowledging that in GCE, the only thing we would be taking out of the bullets would be the preference to 21 and older.
Yes.
We would maintain the other two bullets.
Okay.
I had one more request on policy JO, paragraph 9, number 5. Looks like it's the final, well, no, it's not the final sentence. When such information is required for the performance of their duties, looks like it's new language, and I'd just like to add the performance of their official duties. So just add the word in official.
Where is that?
And
Seen
I
it?
think actually what she's looking at
Am I looking at
were
the wrong
my
one?
proposed edits.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, paragraph 9, page 9, number 5.
Okay, yeah.
When such information is required for performance of their official duties. But it's on the edit that I
Is it
It's on the edit
suggested.
that you had, okay.
Yeah, just add that.
Do you see what
one
we're talking
word.
about, Laura? Okay. Yeah, that's a good.
I am fine with that list. Is there any additional items? So Laura has the list of the items we made no changes to, or accepting the changes that were made previously, not tonight.
So
Madam
we-
Chair, I move to approve the policies as read by Ms. Laura Byram.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Halfway done.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Next, under recommendations, I believe Marshall or Doug, I'm not sure, it might be Marshall coming forward. This is a presentation for the board to consider renewing our lease with East Orange Little League for ball fields, the water tower field in front of Locust Grove Middle School, as well as the fields behind the primary elementary school. Marshall?
That's correct. Thank you, Dr. Hardick, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, like Dr. Hornet said, this is the annual lease renewal. Really no changes. Here if you have any questions.
Is there any questions?
Lights. I've heard from Little League parents that lights or lack thereof are an issue, especially because they have to play so late after the school day.
At the primary school and the elementary school, there are not lights back there. That is correct. Mr. Arnold might have some information on that if we had ever looked at doing a project like that. I'm sure it'd be very costly. Not just, of course, putting in the poles and the lights, but the electrical infrastructure from the schools. But that can be something we can look at, get you a number.
I suspect that's something we would want to, since we're partnering with East Orange, correct, Doug? We would hopefully have them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, especially my district, I know Sandy's got her own stuff going on in District 5, but in Locust Grove, otherwise, there's really nothing. Like, I was looking, there's no venues, there's nothing. And so I know the kids really enjoy having the ability to play ball and that does, granted, during closer to summer months, we've got longer days, but as we go later into the year, they get shorter and shorter. And we've got some really good ball players out in my neck of the woods, at least. So I think that would be something I'd be interested in having a conversation, us looking into that and working with the little leagues to see if there can be an agreement made for that.
That's what I was going to just suggest, is possibly the county also contributing to the cost of maybe lighting a partner.
I agree. That'd be great.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, if you're good, are you guys good for a motion? Yeah. Madam Chair, I move to approve the 3 lease agreements as presented for Locust Grove Elementary School, Middle School, and Primary School.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. And finally, under a recommendation, Mr. Arnold is going to come forward. And you have some information in front of you regarding a new VDOT initiative to install a roundabout at the intersection of High Street and 231 in Gordonsville. Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hornick. Madam Chair, members of the board. As some of you may be aware, they are actually planning to construct 2 roundabouts at either end of High Street in Gordonsville. Of course, the one at the east end will be more the concern of the barbecue exchange, but the one at the west end does impact Gordon Barber Elementary. And therefore, we have received a request from VDOT for a right-of-way donation for that project as it affects the corner of the property by High Street and Route 231. And if you want to go to that, we got that drawing there that is a close-up of the roundabout. And if you look at the lower left portion of the drawing, first of all, the roundabout cuts off a looser radius of our ball field as opposed to the original intersection, which goes like this. And on top of that, and the area of the right-of-way donation for the actual project is about 3/10 of an acre. But then the request also includes about twice that area for the trapezoidal shape down in the lower left there, which is a retention structure underground, same as what we have at the addition at Gordon Barber Elementary. And that is the alternative to having a big open pond, which we are dealing with also at the high school as well as we explore the CTE Center possibilities there. But that would go under the field there and would be maintained by VDOT and would not affect our operations. The administration is recommending approval of the right-of-way donation for the benefits that's provided to the school, which includes sidewalks all the way from the bus loop entrance to the intersection and through the roundabout, and then all the way to Wright Street at the south end of 231. And they will also, of course, replace any fencing that they take down and relocate with brand new fencing and seed and landscape the area to a better standard than what it is now. That's the gist of it. Any questions or comments, discussion?
Were any other proffers discussed during your conversations with them, or just the sidewalk?
Just the sidewalk and the fields around it. We may have a separate project involving a grant for 80% of the cost of a sidewalk along Wright Street, but that'll be a separate discussion.
And the ball field.
Yeah, this is under the ball field, but that will be brought up to better than current standard.
Okay, they would replace that and fix it after they dug the retention area.
Yes, it all needs to be restored. And like I say, we would not be involved in any of the maintenance of the underground structure. That would remain with VDOT.
Are there any negative impacts to the school division or school or students?
The only negative is that we lose a little bit of land, but having those sidewalks, like I say, is more than an offset for that. And on top of that, you have just a safer intersection. You'll have no more of these right angle left turns with trucks risking, if you have ever pulled up there at the stop sign and had to back up so that truck doesn't hit your car,
Right.
that will all be eliminated.
Good, excellent.
So I'm wondering, is this even under our purview, considering I believe the Board of Supervisors owns our property? So is it ours to give, or would this need to go before the Board of Supervisors?
They want a permanent easement, is that what they're looking for?
That's correct.
Permanent
Mhm.
easement of our property.
Yeah, school board property. That's how I've heard it referred to.
And if we were to say no, then they would probably come back and get
They
it
would-
in a different way.
Yes, they would do
Quick take.
a domain easement. Yeah, and I think this is the right approach.
And Ms. Quinter, yes, I believe this is your purview, board property, to determine if you all want to grant this access or not.
Can we get lights on the ball field?
Sure.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
I mean, they're already going under there. At least wire it. I mean,
Let them do the infrastructure, and we can put the lights up later when we have the money.
That's right.
can we? That was a serious question. Can we ask for?
Do it, never hurts to ask. Is there a timeline on when they need to answer on this?
They're looking to move fairly quickly, I would say within a month. I did not see, you could certainly pull up that letter, Laura, if you want to.
And if we were to follow Ms. Quintern's suggestion and request either VDOT or the county to put some type of underground infrastructure or electrical conduits to put up lighting, would that be impacted if this was already in place?
It would not be negatively impacted, and whereas if we were to request that and try and force it into this thing, it would delay all kinds of stuff.
Thank you.
What impact would it have on the students? Because obviously they're going to be starting construction relatively soon, and that's going to create a mess.
Well, they will, of course, need to provide temporary fencing on the school side of the property they're working on.
But transportation-wise, because they're probably going to end up closing off that street. So now we're going to have to reroute students coming in from Main Street into Gordon Barber.
That is true.
Okay.
That is true.
And I would hope that they would only do one at a time and not do both.
Yes.
Have they
I will,
talked to
for what it's
Justin?
worth, I will request that they do them
At different years would
not
be great.
simultaneously, but
Let us recoup.
consecutively,
Yeah.
put it that way.
In the letter, they're seeking a response by August 5th.
So I would propose a request from this board that we make that ask of VDOT, and then possibly call a special called meeting to discuss approval once we have an answer from them
About the lighting?
Based on,
They-
yeah.
they-
about electrical.
So they have.
They will not be able to put that in. I'm just being realistic.
Yeah, it sounds like that
certainly
that it
they-
wouldn't prevent us to doing it
Yeah,
subsequent.
we absolutely can do it. But it would not be,
It's a matter of who pays for it.
Right.
yeah,
That's-
yeah.
I mean, they could proffer funding for it. Absolutely.
Hey, Doug, you might have to speak with Christine Perryman here. They're talking about the 5th as a date. They
Mhm.
have it as Friday. The 5th is a Monday. That's the day we actually meet. That's our
Correct.
next meeting.
I can get them
So
to adjust the date.
does she
if need be.
mean Friday the 2nd, Friday the 9th, or does she mean Monday, August the 5th?
I'll get that clarified.
So,
And I'll request it be at least Tuesday, the 6th, in case we want to wait and.
if you let her know, I think that we meet on the 5th,
Mhm.
we could have a response to her by Friday the 9th,
Yeah,
I think would be reasonable.
okay.
Are you
Will do.
working with the county also on this?
No,
Not County Board of Supervisors? Because that's where I was thinking of, maybe they would offer funding for that type of thing. And you're thinking VDOT?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it with builders, so I mean, they're already going to be there, and they want the land just given to them.
well,
So
like I say,
could
I'm.
consider
you know,
it a
they're-
fair trade-off.
they are providing improvements on our property. They aren't just taking the land and doing nothing for us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Technically, we don't own the sidewalk. They own that.
Right.
They're just making the sidewalk
But
for themselves.
It will be there for us to use.
I know, but the technicality of it is they still own the sidewalk, so it's really not ours to.
Any general idea of what a cost would be to do something like that, to add that electrical conduit underneath?
Just the conduit by itself might be around $100,000, but then you add the lighting, you're up in the 300, 400 range.
Okay.
In my neighborhood, I spoke with REC. I don't know if it's the same company, but we had conduits installed for street lights that were about 20 grand a piece.
A piece, yes. Yeah, this is, certainly there's no electric company involved other than with the relocations, and they're not going to donate that.
I would still request if the board agrees that we make the ask and see what the answer is. That would be.
Gary, would you have any insight into, is this something that the Board of Supervisors may even consider working with us on something like this kind of a request?
I think the lighting was based off of the other end of the county, is what we were talking about with the Board of Supervisors.
There'd be a lot of things ahead of it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a demand for lighting at Gordon Barber. We don't have a proper field to which
Yes.
to apply that lighting to.
Right.
He can ask verbally. I mean, I would say it never hurts to ask the question. I don't think it sounds like it's going to go too far, but it never hurts to ask the question.
Yeah, I just don't want to hold up the project, but
No, and that would be the rationale for accepting a no. But if we don't ask the question, we don't know if they may consider it. How long you guys been
And-
talking about this?
I've been aware of the interest in constructing roundabouts for at least a year, but the specifics hadn't come out too much more recently.
Okay, well, I will support your thought and defer to the rest of the board. And just thumbs up or thumbs down, and just ask him to reach out to VDOT.
Well, just being devil's advocate here, if we do request lighting from the Board of Supervisors or whoever, how are we going to get a field that is appropriate for that? Because this one is not.
Did you?
I
I was
don't know.
asking.
That's
Did
why
I
you're here to answer.
thought you said that they were going to make the field better than what it is currently.
They'll make the conditions better. It'll have fresh grass instead of dirt, but that field is not, I mean, it is not dimensioned for, we haven't had ball games there in years.
Doesn't mean we can't start. I
Well,
mean, anything we can do to help improve our community, I'm all for. So I think that at least asking from VDOT if they would proffer funds to provide the conduit for some lighting in the fields that they're going to be tearing up, I think that would be an appropriate ask, and then we can see where they stand on that.
we can certainly ask.
Please do. Anything else on that one? Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we have Ms. Blair is here this evening for an update on 24-25 meal prices. Linda?
Bless you.
Excuse me.
Good evening, Dr. Hornick, Madam Chair, members of the board. As far as meal prices for the upcoming school year, we have applied for all 10 school locations to be grouped together under the community eligibility provision, so that all Orange County Public School students will receive free breakfast and free lunch every school day. Eligibility for our participation in CEP is based on the identified student percentage for students attending Orange County Public Schools. Attending students that make up this ISP are those who are identified as directly certified by the Department of Social Services. The families that DSS certifies are those who qualify for SNAP, TANF, Medicaid, homeless, migrant, runaway, foster care, enrolled in Head Start or Early Head Start programs such as that. The school nutrition program is primarily funded by federal reimbursement for each meal served to students. So the current federal free reimbursement is $2.73 for breakfast and $4.35 for lunch. The federal paid reimbursement rate is 38 cents for breakfast and 50 cents for lunch. Annual federal meal reimbursement rates are released each year in July generally, and so I'm waiting for those to be released for this year. Our free reimbursement rate of 70.46% is determined by multiplying our ISP, which is 44.04%, by a factor of 1.6. So meals that are not reimbursed at the free rate will be reimbursed at the paid rate, and no student payments will be collected. The cost of revenue lost, any kind of revenue loss, is covered by other school nutrition funds. Our free reimbursement rate last year was 68%. This year it will be 70.46. Upon DOE approval of our new application, our improved free rate will hold for another 4 years, and this covers us through school year 2028-29, unless, of course, we reapply again next year, and then it goes for another 4 years. So it keeps rolling depending on the year. So there are many advantages to having free meals for kids, including participation, improvement in attendance and test scores. And I know that this past year, we experienced continued increases in student meal participation at all of our schools, and that's at breakfast and at lunch. Adult and visitor meals are not reimbursed, and therefore they will be sold per item with a la carte prices. Are there any questions?
I'm just wondering how long you've been using the CEP process.
We started that with one school, which would have been this one. I want to say, gosh, it's probably been 4 years, maybe, no, more than that, 5, 6 years.
And do you feel
Time
that it's
flies.
more comprehensive and easier program to make sure our students are fed?
Absolutely. I feel like this is so beneficial to our students, and I see more students coming for their meals and enjoying their meals and feeling confident to come into the lunch line with no status to have to think about. Everyone's equal.
Yeah, and do we still do the, did you do like the second breakfast or something? Did you guys do that?
We do, excuse me, we do several different breakfast initiatives. We have grab-and-go breakfast. We have breakfast kiosks at a couple of the schools. The high school did have the second chance breakfast. I think it got to be a bit of a disciplinary problem at one point. So I think they kind of took that down, but we'll certainly continue with our breakfast initiatives of allowing the kids to eat breakfast in the classroom. And at a couple of schools, we have kiosks at the bus where the buses come unload and where parents let their kids off. We give them breakfast right there at a couple of the primary schools. And we have one school that we deliver breakfast directly to the classroom, and it's all based on how the principal and the school runs and what works best for each school, because they're all a little different as far as the general makeup of the school, the physical makeup of the school, whether they have stairs, don't have stairs, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for the work you do and all of your staff keeping the students fed and able to be engaged in their instruction. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your kind words. It's my pleasure. And if you let me talk, I'll talk about it all night.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Linda. And next, Judy, Monica, I have an update on VALS.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Hornick, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to come back again tonight and share a little more information about VALS with a little more detailed information from the division level as far as our assessment results from last year. So just as a reminder, VALS stands for Virginia Language and Literacy Screening System. We've been involved with VALS for the past 2 years. Year before last, we were involved in the pilot, so many of our classrooms across the division were involved with test administrators who came out from UVA to administer those to their students. And this past year, all of our classes in K-3 were involved in what was called the soft launch. So we were one of 17 school divisions across Virginia who were involved in that. So then just a little bit of background about why this is so important. Of course, it is another result of the Virginia Literacy Act. But just to frame our discussion tonight, again, the goal of reading is the ability for students to understand what they have read. And language development is critical to this. And so there's a big focus on both comprehension, encoding, decoding, and language in vowels. So it's more extensive than what our students have been assessed on previously using PALS. So again, for that outcome of reading fluency, we want our students to be able to put all those skills together, and where you see those intersecting is what enables our students to be able to integrate all those skills and then comprehend what they have read. So using vowels, which is aligned to the science of reading, and I know Monica has given a lot of in-depth presentations related to that in the past. Vowels gives a snapshot of a student's literacy skills at that moment in time. It helps us identify students who are at risk for developing or for having reading difficulties at the time, and it provides for teachers information on how they can target instruction to meet those students' needs. And it allows us as a division and as schools to measure growth of students over time, as we'll be using this assessment. Actually, we begin in pre-K with the vowels assessment. So as I said earlier, we started in 22-23, and then this past year, we were involved in the soft launch. And then next year, this coming year, which actually is the year we're just now moving into, it will be our literacy screener in grades K through 3. We'll be doing a pilot of the subtests in grades 4 and 5, and then the following year, grades 4 and 5 will be using vowels as their screener. Now Monica's going to talk a little bit about the comparison between PALS and vowels and why we've transitioned from one to the other, or why we're being required to do that, and then we'll move from there into some of the scores.
Hi. So if you see the graphic, on the left-hand side, it shows in the box the components that were part of vowels, which were very basic. They did an encoding and a decoding and a reading passage. It expanded, so on the right-hand side, it shows the expansion of more in-depth subtests that dive deeper into the necessary skills that are necessary for students to become full readers, everything that we use. And it also highlighted in the center, you see it says language comprehension, and that's where it's looked at for syntax, for vocabulary. So there's an in-depth dive also into the language comprehension part. And then together, once if there's automaticity and fluency you see running around the outside, once a student acquires all those skills and there's automaticity, then the fluency that we hear so much talk about, that's when fluency occurs, because it's happening without thought, and that's when full comprehension or understanding of what's being read is able to happen. And so on the next slide, you will see a breakdown of all the subtests that were involved in the soft launch part of the pilot, and those were provided. It was a more extensive list of subtests than what the new actual ended up as the K-3 literacy screener for this coming school year. Because they needed to see all of the subtests and the information together to see how it gave us the picture of the student. And so once they looked at, they were able to say this subtest is better than this subtest at providing that information. So they were able to eliminate many of the subtests or make them optional for school districts or schools to decide they wanted that information from their students.
When you say they, are you speaking about the Department of Education?
I'm sorry, the Virginia Literacy Partnership, which is UVA, which is contracted by VDOE.
Thank you.
And so you'll just see the code-based, it goes apart
code-based, and then the language comprehension. And then those components were what was in that original, the first image that we saw.
So just to put that, I guess, more concisely, is just that the VALS is much more comprehensive than the PALS assessment in terms of looking at all of those skills that students have to integrate in order to read successfully. When the students have completed their assessments, the way their scores are reported is the students fall into one of three bands. So a low risk, which would be a student that it's demonstrating that they're making adequate progress within their core instructional program. Moderate risk, which would indicate that there's some risk for developing reading difficulties and that there may be a need for explicit instruction in certain skills, the ones that Monica's been sharing with you. And then high risk, which indicates that they are at high risk of developing reading difficulties. Students who fall in that range were required to provide the individualized reading plan with interventions by their teachers tailored to meet the students' needs. So in this past year, and being part of the soft launch, our students and teachers were participating in this really for the first time. So our teachers were learning how to administer it, enter the scoring. Our students were also getting familiar with it, but our teachers were also at the same time learning about structured literacy practices and then how to interpret that data and respond to that with instruction as well. So we're going to walk through just the results from K3. This is from the division level. So the reports that we receive break our students down into the percentage of students in those grade levels who fall within those bands. The schools have access, and we can gain that through the schools as well, but it's not broken down on a division level as specifically. So for a school, each student's scores are represented, and they're able to look at the areas in which the student needs support and where there needs to be the greatest individualized instruction to meet their needs.
The other part with the pilot was we were providing feedback on all of the reports that they were providing or the reports that weren't there. So therefore, things have been adjusted as the year went as to what they were providing us with.
And even the scores with the percentages of students who were in these bands was adjusted throughout the year as that data was coming in, and they were vetting that. We had to change some of what we had already calculated because that changed as they were calculating the scores. So you can see we'll just walk through one of these and then we can look at the others. So with kindergarten, you can see the data fall and spring, the percentage of students who fell in the high risk category, moderate, and then the percentage in low risk. So we really want our students in that low risk category is where we would ultimately like to see them. And of course, this shows that some students have moved in from high to moderate risk, which is good improvement, or from moderate to low risk. We do not want our students moving the other direction. And then we have this broken down for first, second, and third as well. So again, we're looking for increases in low risk and moderate because some of that's going to reflect that students have moved to the next range as well. And so ultimately, our schools are starting to set goals around how can we, what percentage of students is it feasible to move and what's our stretch goal for moving those students. It would be possible, depending upon a student's scores, that they could be in the moderate range, make a lot of growth, and still be in that moderate risk band. But what's really important is that our teachers are able to track those students and the subtests and determine where they need their instruction in order to move forward.
The information from the subtests can also be used for instruction to make instructional decisions by the classroom teacher.
Okay.
Or to say like a thermometer saying, oh, the child has the fever, and then we need more diagnostic. So either thing could occur.
So our next steps following this first year with the soft launch is, of course, to implement the K3 literacy screener this year, to pilot this in grade 4 and 5 in particular. I'm not sure about the middle school grades yet. I did have 4 to 8, but I think that may be in some classrooms and not all. Is that correct? And then, of course, we will continue training in how to assess and administer this, and then interpretation of the scores as well, and then how that aligns to the instruction that should be provided. And then, of course, we will continue with communication with our families around the individualized reading plans and the practices that are occurring in the classroom, communication with you as a board and with community stakeholders on how our students are progressing. Yeah. So we're happy to answer any questions you might have about this. And we also have a link to some resources for families as well.
As much as I hate testing, I like to see the progression. That's good to see, especially with our focus being on literacy coming up. Do you all have any feedback from teachers as to their preference between PALs and VALs and the values, even from what you all see?
Do you want to speak directly to that?
Yeah. The teachers are very positive because PALS always gave a number, and that was a benchmark, and then it stayed there. And this is usable information, and it gives them, again, something to teach from in many cases. It also was more extensive, so it answered a lot of questions sometimes about students that we were trying to work, or they were trying to work through to figure out what exactly is going on. So it's been positive. We had lots of headaches along the way just because it was a soft launch, and we were one of the first 3 districts because of our start of school to launch in. So we had lots of technical issues that they won't know until all these people log in at the same time and try to use these tests. But the teachers really hung and then strong, and then at the end they were very happy with what our end results mid-year and final with using the assessment and the growth that they did see. They felt like it was more reflective of what they had been instructing.
It definitely gave our teachers the opportunity to become familiar with something before it was required across the board. So it wasn't quite, it's a little bit easier to grasp that in stages as it is all at once. The teachers with whom I've spoken have said that they really felt that they had gotten to know their students much better as readers, and they like that language component and also the automaticity component of the assessment as well. They felt that they gave them a lot better information to be able to guide their students.
And the PALS was a pilot program. Was that just 1 year?
PALS is the screener that we've been using for, oh my gosh, I don't know how long, as long as I have been, for quite a long time since I've been teaching, we've been using PALS, so I don't know.
This is my 34th year in education, and I think it probably was very close to the start of that.
Well, congratulations. Good job.
It was time for an update.
Sounds promising.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, Monica, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board.
All right, on to board member items. Legislative committee update. Ms. Harrington and Ms. Quindern.
Ms. Harrington, would you like to kick us off?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Would you like to kick us off?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
So our last meeting, I think went over really well. We discussed all the things that we talked about here at the board. I'm pulling up the minutes here. Bear with me. I haven't gotten confirmation from any of our representatives as to whether or not they want to move forward on anything that we've proposed as of yet. We discussed teacher retention, incentives in the rural areas, cost to compete adjustment, and JLARC. There is a concern because in Orange, looking at the cost to compete for Northern Virginia, we are enveloped by neighbors that get that cost to compete, but we don't have that. So we're in a difficult spot for 2 reasons. We don't get the adjustment that Culpeper, Spotsy, and Fredericksburg get, and the LCI, because of the large farmlands and businesses, it's thrown as a result, and it's higher than Culpeper and Spotsylvania. So it looks like we're more affluent than we actually are because we have such large properties here. Therefore, our locality is responsible for carrying more of the burden, which is unfair. So that was discussed. Sandy had brought up JLARC and I believe Dr. Hornick had said that there's 6 to 8 states left that do a staffing-based model. Most other states pick up a different style. So we asked if our reps would have any interest in looking at that and carrying forward something. Student outcomes were discussed, absenteeism, excused versus unexcused. At our last meeting, we had talked about that there's no differentiation between the two, and schools are being penalized. So if we excuse students or if we don't excuse them, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. So we requested looking at an allowance for a program where students can apply for a program that would allow for students being away for 5 days, allow for a packet or something to be sent home so they can continue their academic progress at home without it being defined as an absence. Sandy provided this, and there's an example from California. They have funding. That's going to be a funding thing. So that was put before them. The Department of Education, timelines versus waivers, we discussed them rolling out these great ideas, but not giving us any time to implement them. And so we discussed that there are serious difficulties in rolling these out, and it poses a huge stressor on our schools and our staff when we have to rush on implementation. We also might get fined as a result of not completing items tasked by the Virginia Department of Education, and we are looking at getting VDOE involved in the legislative committee as well. Legislation, all nonprofit organizations receiving funding from taxpayers is an amount greater than $20,000 shall be required to comply with FOIA laws. We discussed that this would be a bipartisan effort, as there are, on both sides of the aisle, there's organizations that are a lobbying arm. For example, the VSBA and SBMA were two examples that we had discussed, where people get tax dollars, these organizations get tax dollars, but they're not transparent with the taxpayers and what they do with them. So we discussed that. There was some difficulties in pushing that forward because it would also require additional funding for additional FOIA officers. So that's still in discussions, but we did put that before our representatives as well. We had open discussion about parties being allowed access to the meetings or not. Technically, it's not a quorum. So there's only 2 board members present during our meetings, and regardless, we discuss everything that happens at those meetings here anyways. So we wanted to get with our attorney. I'm not sure
Did
if
we
we
get
have
any
progress
feedback on that?
I can forward you. I think he did respond to me
Okay.
while I was out.
Okay, so we'll get some clarification on that, but our next meeting is September 26th at 11:30 a.m. virtually. One thing that has been on my mind is we don't really have any discussions on the federal level, and we do have a federal representative, so I think that would be something important to, look at what's going on federally and have those discussions with our congresswoman, so that way, it's not just one, a waste of time, but 2, we're focusing on both aspects, both locally and federally. That's just my 2 cents. That wasn't discussed. And then the Democratic leadership partial appeal, reps wanted a full repeal on the VMS DEP. This would impact outgoing OCPS students. So we got a little bit of information on that. And then I already discussed that the budget implementations would have a lot of implications by expanding the state team with FOIA. So that's probably going to be a longer term goal looking into that. But that sums up my report out.
So I would just say we should follow up on the reporter thing once you give us that information so we can let them know whether they're able to come. Yeah, I know Laura's going to look that up, so thank you. I thought it was a good meeting. I thought that we had some valid concerns that definitely impact our area, specifically the JLARC and the funding perspective. And basically, we're kind of getting dinged because we have the appearance of being a high revenue county, but we really don't because it's such an agricultural based community. So I think that good conversation. I would hope that maybe we can go or have Dr. Hornick talk with his other organizations, see if anything that they are looking at maybe aligns with some of these things, and continue to try to push this conversation and or find other areas that we feel are a good fit for Orange County. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say, Chelsea, at one point I think you and I had kind of looked at, I think it was Caroline County that had that position paper that they put out to the community, just to kind of get positive political feedback and support, when it goes to the legislature. So I'm just thinking that as we go further, I should have brought a copy of that with us. Maybe we can develop a communication just for other community citizens, that type of thing, just big picture stuff that we're talking about, and continue to focus and try to get more feedback from all community and business and professional leaders too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that having our legislative priorities, I think that's what you were discussing. As new legislation rolls out at the end of this year, we can start tracking that, and we could give that our position to our legislators and obviously to the community at large, but just so that way they can actively represent us, which I don't feel that we've been able to have that blessing over the last several years, decades actually. So I think it's important that what's important for everybody here is that they are listening to us. I think that they have a lot more of an understanding of what you all go through and the difficulties and challenges. So I think it's a good step in the right direction.
And I would also suggest that building those relationships is always a good thing. So when we are able to cut some red tape versus big policy issues, we have that support. So thank you for working with me on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you both. All right. Moving on. We're almost done. I promise. Board member comments. Future agenda items. Ms. Harrington, did you want to talk about the retreat? Is that what you want to do?
Sure, go ahead. I have a couple agenda items, not specifically about the retreat. I think one may fall into that area. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, since we've just been talking policy, and we have transitioned out of our membership with VSBA, and we have a lot of administrators sitting in here listening to us ask simple questions or further our understanding and knowledge. I'm suggesting that we maybe consider doing a subcommittee for policy, or that we identify a percentage of those policies that need to be reviewed on an annual basis, and we have a subcommittee or just board, open board meeting, depending on what you feel is appropriate, to look at those things and start updating them. We will have to use probably legal, but I think that maybe talking to Laura a little bit more and see when the last full 5-year updates, because I think you guys did it sections, right? It wasn't all 5 years or all policies in 1 year?
Well, the VSBA was doing them, so they were just reviewing them. I didn't notice any pattern, so I'm not sure how they decided.
Well, I was just thinking that maybe asking the member of the administrative team that is in charge of those different implementation of the policies here to join a subcommittee of school board members and have these discussions outside of all these lovely people, and then bring it back for discussion if we want to. And that way you guys can keep working on other instructional and educational priorities that you may have. And I think it would be a good learning opportunity for me, and hopefully you guys too, to just go through them and start adjusting and addressing those things. So
I like that. Yeah.
I also think that it would be good to have a board member appoint a person from the community to serve in that capacity as well. Obviously have board representation, but I think I would be open to that if we could include more of the community.
Yeah.
Just
I guess it would be, again, as a subcommittee, if it's something we want to do as a full board and how that would play out from a public open meeting process. But yeah, I would be open to either of those things. I just think that we have made the decision to go forward and try to do some of this stuff on our own. And this would provide us both a learning opportunity, give us the ability, so those things that maybe Ms. Ayers isn't responsible for, she can be part of that conversation for those specific policies than every single administrator. I've done it in other school divisions where we've took the entire board policies and done it over a 2 or 3 month period. But maybe you guys can think about it, and either in our governance retreat, our retreat, we could talk more, or we can just bring it back and thumbs up or thumbs down. So if you have any thoughts.
Dr. Hornick, sorry to put you on the spot. How would you feel about exploring the development of a subcommittee, is what you're calling it, a subcommittee?
Board committee, subcommittee, whatever that.
Or is there already a policy in
I know
place?
that Ms. Anderson said that there had been, in a couple of years or last year or something, there had been some people that had worked on some policy changes. So I don't know if there was an actual committee or if that was just part
That was
of-
just us responding in a crisis.
Okay. I can appreciate the candidness.
Yeah. As you all know, and I have sent this to you, my main concern is I don't know how we're going to keep up. I don't know where we're going to get monitoring of the General Assembly. I don't know where we're going to keep up with the bills. We certainly don't have the number of people that would require to write policy based on the number of bills that come out. So looking at what we currently have and improving it, that's one thing. How we keep up with upcoming General Assembly sessions remains my biggest concern. I don't, currently we don't have a plan for that. The legislative committee is important for lawmakers to know what we're facing, but that's not going to necessarily change the fact that when the General Assembly goes to session in early 2025, there's going to be another 200, 300, 400 bills that deal with education, and then those are going to get parsed out, and all those are going to need to be taken, and then policy is going to have to be written off of them, either new or amended. I mean, the things that we brought to you tonight, that is stuff that was provided to us, right? And then we can take it or leave it. We can amend it. We can adjust it. I don't know who's going to do that. Well, we don't have anybody to do that. What we did tonight, we don't have that. So we don't. The folks in front of you don't have that time, or I don't. So I'm not sure.
I don't expect to put this back on staff. As board members, we are responsible for oversight and development of policies. And so the Department of Education does track all of the education-related bills, and they provide a report at the end. But I think that would really be up to us to keep on top of that, or find a way to ensure that we keep on track with that. So I think it's a good discussion to have. I think maybe exploring it more during the retreat would be a good idea, Sandy. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I think that there's a better way than what we've been doing in the past.
And I think Ms. Quinton and I are committed to trying to review those things that are out there on the legislative website. But as Dr. Hornick says, there's 300 or 400 policies a year that get put out there. So
There's bills, right?
Bills,
Not necessarily all of them ultimately all get passed. The VDOE tracks them, 100% correct, and they did something this year that I hadn't seen in my previous years. They did a kind of a video overlay and put a PDF presentation for us as far as what the new bills were, and give you a link to them. As far as turning those into a policy, that's the next step, and knowing the manual enough to know, okay, what do we have, what already aligns, what needs to be changed in policy IGAD so that it doesn't conflict with now has to come out in AG. Those are the connection pieces that that we're going to have to find a way to replace.
Dr. Hornick, do any of the organizations that you belong to, the superintendents, whatever, or the rural school districts, or none of them develop policy?
Correct. They help us keep an eye on what is the latest soup du jour from the General Assembly. Obviously, you see a whole bunch of things that are tied to mental health. That's a huge priority that the governor has laid out. And so I'm not surprised when I see fentanyl awareness. I'm not surprised when I see school-connected overdose and communication procedures. I'm not surprised when we see mental health, because those are tidbits to come. And I know you're talking about legislative priorities. I'm kept up to date on what the legislative priorities are, but as far as how we make sure that our policy manual was up to date is another step.
Well, we start taking it on, doing what we can do, identifying those things that we are unable to do. Hopefully we will look at other resources together to try to, close the holes. And I know we do have our legal counsel who has agreed to review some of those things that we may need done in a more timely manner. So I think definitely more conversation is needed, but I would like to explore it.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else have anything?
For future agenda items, I would like to put a resolution together regarding cell phones and the board's position on the executive order that came out from Governor Glenn Youngkin. Just to be frank, I agree. I know I've gotten phone calls from parents who were concerned that, I pay for a cell phone, it needs to be in my kid's backpack. Well, my intention is not going to be to remove the device off of the child, but to ensure that every classroom has the same standard in which the phone is off and away during the school day, unless there is an emergency. We know that communication devices, cell phones, smartwatches, all of the above are distractions in the classroom, and they compete with our educational time. And so I fully support the executive order that came down, and I think that having clarity on the board's position on the matter would be important. So I would like to draft something up, send it to you all, unless someone else would like to draft something up and send it to the board.
Dr. Hornick, do I remember you saying that we were already looking at something relative to that?
So obviously we already have policy, and I think that we started to take a look at what's written in policy, and we met with all of our administrators. My goodness, was that today? It feels like a week ago. That was just this morning here in this room. So we had all of our administrators here, and very similar to what you said, Ms. Quintern, it's really about the consistent enforcement across the board. We already have the language that they need to be off and away during the instructional time. We discussed at what point, we're considering the start of our instructional day, right? Is it the minute that you cross the threshold? Is it the minute that you walk into your first block or your first period or your first class, whatever it might be? So I believe that we will have to make some minor adjustments to the policy, which will make sure that aligns very much what's already in the Code of Conduct, which takes an expanded view of electronic devices, not just cell phones. And so I believe that it is just a matter of consistent enforcement across every classroom, which is what you said.
So we won't need to draft anything additional, just
I don't believe we have to at this point. I think we need, our cell phone policy, our electronic device policy needs to be updated. I mean, it still says beeper.
It says what?
Beeper.
Beeper.
It's policy JFC-R.
Yeah, so we have some things that we need to amend, and there's a line in there that made sense before we were a one-to-one, which is, if I'm in a classroom and I have access to a device, or the school can give me a device, and I don't have enough for the rest of the folks here, and I want them to do some type of activity that required internet connectivity, it made sense to allow you all to take out your device to do that. Now we're a one-to-one. We don't need to have the at the teacher discretion part. It's off and put away because we're now a one-to-one school division with filtered content coming through on a school device. So that language needs to go, and we can clean it up with electronic devices that really aren't used anymore, a la beeper. But if you look at the crux of the policy, which is we're not using it during instructional time, and if you look what's already in our code of conduct, which is it's off and away during instructional time. As I read the executive order, I believe we are already in compliance, and of course the goal is they're going to have some additional listening sessions, and more resources will come out through September and October, and then I suspect there could potentially be some model guidance that would come out that we may have to adjust and amend should that come about, and then everything goes into is set to go into effect January 1. What we talk to our administrators about is we already know what best practice is. We already expect that devices are put away, so we're not competing with teachers in the classroom with the devices. It's really about setting the expectation and having consistent enforcement across all the classrooms. So that was very much the most significant crux of the conversation was how are we going to actually do this day in and day out to ensure that we have set the expectation and then we're following through.
So I don't know how the board feels about us putting our position out, so that way the start of the school year, the entire school system knows where the board stands on electronic devices during instructional time.
I think a resolution is a good idea. I think just putting it out there that this is where we stand and that we support you all and that we want to make sure that the policies are implemented. So I would be fine with it. I'd be curious to look over it and see what you come up with. Absolutely.
So you're going to do a draft, Chelsea?
Unless somebody else would like to. I'm not saying
It's your story.
I have to. Okay, I will present that. And then I would like an update on the soil test that we did or did not approve at the next board meeting. I know we had talked about some kind of test for the CTE.
Do you want to catch up where we are currently, Doug?
Yes, we had first commissioned a study to make sure that the site was suitable to build on, and that has been successful. Where we are now, we have two scopes going on. One is to do a complete survey of that site, because when Timmons surveyed the track, they stopped at the ditch, which is on the right side of the site. So they're going to survey the entire site, and the softball field and up into the parking lot and so forth. The other part of the scope they are currently tasked with is to confirm sufficient water volume and pressure from the main water line that passes right by there in the back parking lot. And after that, then there will be soil borings to confirm how good the soil is for bearing for the facility.
And it would be at that point that we know how much we have true feasibility at that spot or not.
Yeah, we have feasibility now. The condition of the soil will determine how much extra reinforcement would be required for the foundation and that sort of thing.
Madam Chair, do you have regular CIP meetings? Or how?
No, we have not had one. It's been a while.
Probably since the spring.
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
That's all I had.
Anything else? I think we should consider doing something, and then just to kind of
Sure.
get what the reports say and all of that.
Sure. Yeah, no, because they're still, honestly, they're still in the middle of doing this work, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Would it be acceptable to ask Dr. Hornick to maybe just in his weekly update, give us a little where we're at?
I will definitely do that too, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did you have anything, Darlene? Nope. The only thing that I wanted to bring up was the retreat. There's really a date floating around so far. That was July.
23rd.
The 23rd?
August, right?
I'm
Not July?
available the 23rd.
No, that was July.
Oh.
No, it was August.
No, it was August.
No, I thought it was July. But okay, August.
That would be next week.
I know. That's why I was trying to rush and get an answer. August 23rd is what we're considering. What's our board meeting? What date is that?
We meet the 5th and the 26th.
Oh, 'cause it's
In
the week
August.
before. Okay,
Friday before the meeting.
that's fine. Okay.
So we are,
Are we in
no one
agreement?
was available the earlier date in August?
Correct, I'm not available.
Okay, so August 23rd.
And Jack said he was too.
Yep.
Okay, I am definitely available that day also.
All right, let's plan for that, Laura. And then we'll see with the location and see if that's available. Okay, that's all I have.
I have two more quick requests. I think that since we, and I don't know if you can let me know if you would prefer to do this at a retreat or just as an agenda item, but I would like to propose the two following agenda items. The first one would be to work on development of the Orange County school system student outcomes focused governance continuous improvement framework. I think I had mentioned this way back when, and the document that I am currently looking at and I've been reviewing, I think I provided you guys an electric copy way back. I was going to give you another one, but the more I read it, the more I realized it didn't quite fit us. So this is a very comprehensive process and framework for developing goals, monitoring, and also doing board quarterly self-evaluations. However, it was developed by the city, the great schools, cities, or something like that, which are all urban. But I would love to spend some time in a governance or a retreat, to explore something else that might fit us. So I will send this to you again electronically so you can look at it. I would absolutely encourage you to bring forth anything else that you may feel is something we can put in place. This is really comprehensive, it's really high level, and again, it does not necessarily truly reflect our community, but it does provide a framework to look at. And then
I think you have to come up with an acronym for that. It's required in education.
I'll work on that, because it's a mouthful. And then the second one I would propose is development of Orange County School System Board Self-Evaluation Tool or Process. That one too. Yeah, acronyms. Next time, I'll bring it back with acronyms, make you guess. That's it. And again, I don't know if you want to talk about further on the retreat, if that would be.
I think that would be an appropriate.
I would think so, because it could probably be a long conversation and multiple, so.
I think we have quite a few different avenues that we can go down, and I think everybody just come up with some ideas that you want to discuss, and then we can go from
So we
there.
just bring them to the retreat with us. We don't have to do a formal.
Oh, no, I don't think so.
agenda, Right?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation starter first. There's a lot.
Yeah, I think
More
it's
that
a
goes
lot more
into it.
information that would need to go into it.
So when it's published as a meeting, is there an agenda associated with it? Or is it just the board is meeting to
No.
discuss?
Yeah, not necessarily.
Multiple-
I'll verify all that, because we haven't had this particular type of retreat before.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Moving on,
that's
closed
it.
session certification.
Pursuant to 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia, the Orange County School Board will convene a closed meeting for the following: discussion of personnel or the performance of a division employee as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for resignation, termination, transfer, employment, salary adjustment, evaluation, and retirement of employees.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. We're in closed session. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Ms. Dawson, may I have closed session certification, please?
Whereas the Orange County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Orange County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
May I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Byram, have roll call.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Dawson?
Aye.
Ms. Harrington?
Aye.
Mrs. Quintern?
Aye.
Madam Chair, the clerk certifies the vote as follows: 4 yes votes, no votes, and 1 member absent. The resolution is approved by a 4-0 vote with 1 member absent.
Dr. Hornick, deposition of personnel.
Yes, ma'am. Recommend approval of the personnel actions as presented in closed session.
May I have a motion?
I move to approve the personnel agenda to include resignation, transfer, retirement, and employment of staff and coaching appointments.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And if there is nothing else, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.